Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. OpTic has responded to the victories that OpTic have been getting in the last couple of weeks. Definitely points on the board, but not exactly the performances they would be looking for. Kenny saying that especially in the respawn modes and the hard points, there are certain plays costing them in certain moments. Which players are therefore under the spotlight yet again? Very much interested in your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. Thought this is pretty funny from Hitch last night because of course all the Drake, Kendrick, this has all been popping off over the last couple of days. And Nameless, we know the COD community, they're like Drake's music in general, right? Drake's the GOAT, all this type of stuff. So anyway, Nameless over the last couple of days, he's been going off on the main stage. He actually had this tweet on the 4th of May that popped off 45k likes talking about the beef, and then he's been following up, right? So he's doing full-on PR. People are talking about Nameless is doing it for Drake, and Kendrick repeating weak fake narratives. So he's been getting himself into that community. Obviously, his tweets have been getting some traction as a result. I thought it was pretty funny, all the discussion around this. These are the major 3 standings as it stands. FaZe are 6-0, as you might well expect. They're honestly not far off breaking a pretty impressive series win streak. I mean, look, just because there's more online qualifiers nowadays. To be fair to FaZe, though, they've played OpTic, right? They've played New York, and they played Toronto this split. So they're at all the hard teams, and they've beaten all of them by FaZe's standards. That OpTic series was very close, of course, looking back on it. And of course, OpTic since then a 5-1, and if you didn't watch the series, you look at this and say, oh, it's exactly as expected, pretty much. But it's not quite as, it doesn't tell the entire story, I wouldn't say, of the matches that have happened over the last couple of weeks. There's some of those series that I never thought that OpTic were going to lose. They weren't ever really especially close to losing them, but certainly they didn't play their best cards, and FaZe are a level above at the moment, and they just haven't lost to anyone in quite some time. There's other key storylines to look at here. Gorillas are 2-4, so they could plausibly get to 3-4. I think they play Miami, Gorillas. So if they were to get the 3-4, that would probably be enough for a winner's bracket spot. Their map count, though, isn't great, which is slightly problematic. That choke against OpTic last night, Game 4, might come back to bite them. But honestly, if they'd have started out their stage with Flames instead of Assault, I think for sure they'd be in the winner's bracket. But they don't have to beat out that many other teams. It's just difficult, right? Because Toronto, Surge, Thieves, Subliners, they are looking all good for the winner's bracket. Ravens are 2-4. Obviously, Minnesota Rocker are 2-3. They play Toronto today. That might be 2-4. So it still is all to play for there. But Vegas, Boston, they look chalked for the winners bracket. Speaking of Vegas, there was quite a lot of drama over this tweet last night. So I guess Lightman decided to put together a card here on Asim's performance so far this stage. Now, we don't typically see a card for so far in the stage, although we did for Flames the other day. On the positive side, he's only played 2 series, but thought I'd put together a card for that. This is Asim's card so far, and it is the worst card that I've ever seen. There's literally no 2 ways about it. The lowest rated card that it's possible to have is a 50, right? So he had a 52 minus the 4 adjustment for losing 4 in a row, right? So the way these cards work, you look at based on the roll, kills per 10, hardpoint per 10, damage per 10, and you rank the players in the rolls, and if you're best in that category in your roll, you get a 99. If you're worst, you get 50, and then the numbers go in between. Then you take the best 2 of each standings, and that's it. So he is worst in the league in every single hardpoint stats, in every single search stats but damage per round, where he's nearly worst. He is worst in ticks per round in control, nearly worst in kills per 10, nearly worst in damage per 10. You average out the numbers, being as generous as possible, comes to a 52. Then with the 4 adjustment, because they're 0-4, it becomes a 48, which is the worst card I've ever seen. Now, the debate really wasn't on Asim's performance, because we know that this guy's not been playing well. He knows it, the team knows it, and obviously the question is, what's next? The question is, was this, a fair thing to do, right? This is always a discussion in the community, really, on whether trashing on pro players that aren't performing well is a fair and just thing. Now, in the regular world of sports, nobody's going to care, right? Like, if players aren't performing well in the public eye, they're going to get roasted. That just is how it is, and that's kind of my feeling on this type of stuff, right? If you're a professional player, you're a salaried pro playing in the league, look, I can feel bad for you and the circumstances, and I think I do in the case of Asim, but at the end of the day, you're getting paid to play a video game at a high level. If you're not doing so, it's understandable what the reaction's going to be. But I always feel like in the COD scene and maybe in other esports, because the community's a bit smaller than in regular sports, because it's a bit of a tighter-knit community when it kind of, everyone's at the events and they're all trying to have a good time, and, the pros and the fans and the community and the content creators are all kind of part of the same journey to try and get this esport to where we think it can be. it doesn't quite feel the same way. And anyway, some people were weighing in on it. As Kismet says, such an odd thing to do. I feel cars are a cool staple to post after majors, but to post mid-splitters out of pocket, thumbs down. Which is maybe a fair enough take from Kismet. At the same time, Kismet was literally shooting Asim's body in that series yesterday, 60 seconds into the game. So we're talking about disrespect. You know, I don't know. I think there's other things to think about there. And as Jacob says, during this mid-stage is some of the weirdest mob mentality, you know, hating basically that I've ever seen. And Doug says not a fan of this either. So, you know, I can see both sides of it. At the end of the day, it's engagement, baby, and that's the name of the game when it comes to stuff like this. So that isn't necessarily going to change. The other thing to discuss though here was on the OpTic side, because they took down Gorillas yesterday, but in an interesting series, they didn't dominate Gorillas. Dashy fried the whole series long, but it wasn't a clean victory. Game 1 wasn't especially clean. Then they won the Game 2 in a reasonable manner. They kind of threw away the Game 3 high-rise control again. They do love playing right now a Karachi Hardpoint. Well, I don't know if they love it, but it's not been their best map, Karachi Hardpoint, and OpTic have decided to practice it against basically everyone they play, which is probably a good idea, but they're still not that good at it, to be fair. Gorillas probably should have won this game. I would say they will feel they definitely should have won this game. They bottled the rotation for many hills in a row, and then it got to this moment, and OpTic were just about in position enough to close out the game. So it was a 3-1 in the end, probably about what I'd have predicted going in, but again, it wasn't a clean-cut victory in the way that FaZe have been handling business. They haven't been absolutely dominating everyone, like it's not been 250 to 100. They beat Vegas or whatever it was, 250 to 190 or something, Game 1 Vista, but after that it was, you know, 6-1, 3-0, like it was clean. It was exactly what FaZe would do back in Cold War, and we've talked about the comparisons between those teams quite a lot. I don't know which team OpTic Texas represents in that Cold War season. Maybe Toronto Ultra, right, who had kind of beat most other people but couldn't beat FaZe at the time. Maybe there's a similar storyline emerging, but OpTic know they're not quite playing at the level. Now, they'll turn up to LAN, it's going to be a different story. The question is, if they were to have lost to Gorillas yesterday, would that have been better for them? I know there's been this debate that every so often flies around in terms of like a wake-up call, right? I'm not sure OpTic necessarily need that, but I think they've just got to be wary that when they turn up to LAN, it's not magically going to change things dramatically necessarily. It might do, and they might just suddenly be playing way better again. But I do think they've got problems to solve that turning up to LAN isn't necessarily going to magically fix. I think they've got to be a little bit careful of that, to be fair. And it's the same way that, like, Toronto, they lost to Boston during Stage 1, then they dominated. Gorillas, they lost to, like, FaZe lost to Gorillas, right, during Stage 2, then they dominated. So maybe if OpTic had have, like, lost that series to Gorillas or lost the series the other day to whoever they played before that, I forget even who they play at this point, because it's just such a, you know the result before the series even sometimes gets underway. Maybe that had been more of a wake-up call. I'm not sure it massively matters, because I think that Kenny and JP and Karma and the rest of the guys, they know that they've not been playing at the level they need to be, and as Kenny said on OpTic's hardpoint performances lately, a lot of hills we should be winning, we're not winning because of certain players. So it doesn't go into specifics on this, but obviously we can speculate on exactly what might be going on here, and as Kenny says, need to iron out these hardpoints. GG's Gorillas 1-3-1 in the ends, and as Kenny goes on to say, had a rough 3 games, right? So Kenny certainly recognises the last 3 series they played have not been great. They've won them, but you know, they don't feel like they're fully locked in, as it were. So time to lock back in, he says. And it can be difficult, I'm not gonna lie. These online qualifiers are painful to watch at times. I can't imagine that they must be pretty painful to play. And staying fully locked in and committed and focused over an entire stint of online qualifiers can't be that easy, but, you know, FaZe seem to manage to do it, and that, of course, is the gold standard. So there's been some debate on exactly who he was talking about there with these certain players, and once again, the debate, I think, comes back to Pred, right? Because you look at the numbers of this series, it's very interesting to see that Pred had the least damage in the lobby by quite some way, by far the lowest damage on his team. And this was a pretty similar scoreboard that he's put up a couple of times now this season, when, sure, they beat Gorillas anyway, but it's not like Pred has been crazy impactful. I mean, Shotzzy's at 86 kills, Pred has 78 kills, least on his team, lowest damage on his team. This isn't maybe the Pred that we expected. Certainly not the Pred that I expected. I expected the Major 1 Pred, to be honest, who was frying, turning up every series, throwing 1.2s and dropping heavy damage, playing with a lot of confidence, running around getting kills. And after the series they played the other day, that's what he said, right? I mean, that he said after on his recent struggles, when they, you know, when he did the interview last week, that after Major 1 wasn't playing like myself, trying to focus on 2 of the other things, I just got to run at people, right? That's my playstyle. And it felt like, okay, maybe Pred's understood what he's got to do to get back to that form. there's a couple of things to look at. The Pred Shotzzy partnership, how that works. Also the fact that in previous seasons, let's say last year on Surge or the year before, that Surge team didn't have the expectations that this OpTic team has. Surge were known to be an upset potential team with lots of talent, but Pred was never expected to go to an event and win it. Whereas playing for OpTic is a bit of a different story. There's more pressure on. Maybe you can overthink things. And the pressure can get to players a little bit more. I don't know. I guess we'll see how it trends. But especially in series like this, Pred would typically just be smoking these teams, right? Just running around getting kills, doing everything it takes, and just frying them. We've seen that Pred hasn't been able to do that against FaZe this season, but against most other teams, he's been doing that, especially at the start of the year. Lately, that's not quite been the same case, and this, like, you know, slow SMG playstyle, we talk about the laying down cheese and all this stuff, right, and all the nicknames that have happened as a result of that. I still think that element is there in his play, and I just don't think it's helping OpTic, especially in the respawns right now. So, yeah, will be interesting to maybe uncover some of those discussions being had behind the scenes at OpTic over the next few weeks, but we'll see when they turn up to LAN whether things are going to be significantly different. These, by the way, are the players looking for their first champs appearance this year. There was a couple of these guys I thought were locked in, such as, you know, not long ago, Geo, I thought was for sure going to make it on Vegas. Now that is far less clear. Gwyn on Ravens, that is up in the air. Lins probably will make it on the Minnesota Rocker. ReeaL, of course, is on Miami. That's looking kind of unlikely. Estriel, Flames, JoeDeceives, aBeZy, 04. Like, there's a chance that, like, all of these guys miss the World Championship. Well, at least most of them. It's not possible for all of them to miss it, because only 4 teams can't make it, and these guys are on, obviously, more than 4 teams, but you know what I mean. JoeDeceives on Thieves. Some of these guys will, but arguably most of them will not this season. This, though, is the schedule for today. So 3 more games to close out the weekend. I'm not going to lie, this might go down as one of the worst schedules for a weekend of COD we've ever seen in COD history. It's got to be up there. Like, the last 3 days have been super clear-cut. Today, look, we don't have any of the big teams playing, apart from Toronto, I suppose, but we do have some interesting series. I at least hope they're interesting. Surge Miami, I think Surge are the better team. Miami, you never really know what's going to turn up with them, but they didn't impress me against New York, and I still don't think New York are especially good, so I'm going to take Surge. Minnesota Toronto could be interesting. That is probably the one that I'm keeping a closest eye on, just because Toronto have been a bit vulnerable lately, and it is also the Standy versus Scrappy revenge game, right? Because, you know, Scrappy, of course, had his big beef with Standy when he was on that team last year, drops him, talks about how, you know, happy he was to get rid of him, basically, and now they're going to be running it back against each other. So Standy will try and get his revenge. I'm not sure it's going to happen. I feel like Toronto, they've just done the job against, like, every team they should beat this season, and I don't think Rocker are that good, to be honest. Standy had a great couple of series last weekends. If he doesn't, I'm just not sure they're good enough, so I think I'm going to lean Toronto. And then Thieves Boston, so here we go again, baby, with another Boston series. I don't know if Beans is going to be back for this one. There was no update on this yesterday, so my assumption is that it's possible, very probable maybe, that Shawnee might still be in the team. Even if Beans is back, I'm going to take Thieves. If Shawnee's there, as much as I like Shawnee, I'm taking Thieves. I'm thinking Thieves. And yeah, I mean, I talked about this the other day. Until Boston can try and win a game 5, I ain't picking them to win. So very much enjoying your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.
It's all good. Just admit you just sucking at me. It's all good.
Brother, Ben, last time I played any, I won 6 in a row. Okay, Ben, you know what? You're terrible at every fucking video game. You're terrible at COD. You're terrible at FIFA. You're terrible at fucking Pummel Party. You're fucking old as fuck. Go to the fucking golf course and stay there. Because you're terrible at every fucking video game you play. Okay, don't fucking sit here and tell me what the fuck is going on.
Where is that guy?
You don't even pass the rock.
Wait. Who's this guy?
I'll pass the rock, okay.
You're terrible at everything.
Wait, Tommy, there's like this random person.
Fuck off.
Is it your